World Cup 2022 is done and over with, but that doesn't mean international football has gotten less exciting because now we have the Euro 2024 qualifiers. And just like we did with the World Cup, we're going to do a bunch of reviews. I don't know if I'm going to do it every single window, we'll see, but I definitely want to keep you guys invested in this because, I mean, there could be some very interesting outcomes by the end of this year. Before we go over a brief preview and then the recent results, here's a quick overview of the format. The European Championship qualifiers consist of 10 groups of 5 or 6 teams. After this round is over, the top 2 from each group will be going on to Euro 2024. One thing that is different though is the fact that finishing third does not mean you are into the playoffs. In fact, the playoff spots have already been determined through teams who recently have won their Nations League group. So without further ado, let's get into these groups, shall we? Group A consists of Spain, Scotland, Norway, Georgia, and Cyprus. Spain are 3-time European champions. 2 of their successes were back-to-back between 2008 and 2012 during their famous golden generation. The other half of my blood hasn't impressed much in the Euros. Scotland reached 2 editions in the 90s and then had a drought that lasted until 2020, where yet again, they crashed out of the groups. Norway, though, hasn't shown anything better in all fairness. Their only appearance goes back to 2000, where they were barely eliminated because of a goal differential tiebreaker with a team that would no longer exist just 3 years later. But perhaps 2024 could see their return, especially now that the team features the Sex God and the Almighty God, who are both better than ever before.
But I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
Georgia has not made a single major international tournament. However, the new golden generation, led by star player Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, have shown glimpses of brilliance and have come closer to qualification with every campaign. It also helps that they won their Nations League group, which guarantees them a spot into the playoffs. Finally, there's Cyprus. Cyprus has never qualified for the Euros, however, they did come close to reaching the playoffs in 2016. But all I'm gonna say is, if you can't beat Bulgaria, you probably don't have a great chance of qualifying. After the first window, Scotland has surprisingly taken an early lead in the group. They defeated Cyprus 3-0 and then stunned Spain at Hampden Park thanks to 2 Scott McTominay goals. Luckily for Spain though, they still hold on to second after a comfortable win versus Norway. The rest of the field isn't too far off, with both Norway and Georgia grabbing a point from each other. Group B features the Netherlands, France, Ireland, Greece, and Gibraltar. The Netherlands have won the Euros once, back in 1988 when Marco van Basten was still banging in goals. France has won 2 tournaments themselves back in 1984 and 2000. With this current generation and pissed off Mbappe being the new masked LeBron, France will be aiming for a 3rd title in 2024. One of the most famous European Championship stories happened in 2004 when Greece did the impossible and won the competition. However, in recent years, the national team has declined significantly and hasn't qualified for the past 2 Euros. And if you thought that was bad, ho 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 ho. But in a domain of hopelessness is a gleaming light of optimism. Greece managed to win their Nations League group, confirming a spot into the playoffs. Ireland have made it to 3 Euros, with their most recent being back in 2016. With the momentum of a massive W in September 2022 and the sky-high potential of Evan Ferguson, the Irish will hope to return in 2024. Then there's Gibraltar, who has been a member of UEFA for just 6 years now. They've never won a qualifier, let alone qualified at all. But we could see flashes of the future in 18-year-old Nicolas Pozzo of Cadiz. With 2 matches played, France are at the top with 6 points. They kicked off their campaign by absolutely decimating the Dutch in just 20 minutes.
Like, bro, I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to see anymore, bro.
And then followed that up with a slim victory versus the Irish. Speaking of the Irish, while they've only played 1 game, they've kicked off very promisingly. Ireland held France scoreless throughout the first half and only conceded through a Pavard banger. If the Irish can continue to put up fights like this, Group B could get really interesting. Don't get too excited right now, Greeks, but your nation is currently sitting second with the game in hand. Right behind them is the Netherlands, who bounced back after defeating Gibraltar 3-0. As for Gibraltar,
it's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good.
Group C gives us some fireworks, with Italy, the Euro 2020 champions, and England, the runners-up. Followed by them is Ukraine, North Macedonia, and Malta. Italy may be the masters at finding new ways to hilariously bottle World Cup qualification, but when it comes to the Euros, they seem to always show up no matter the overall quality of the squad. England has never won the European Championship, and I hope to God it stays that way until I die. The farthest the 3 Lions have gone was the final back in 2020, where they lost in a dreaded penalty shootout. Ukraine has qualified for the past 3 editions, with the most recent seeing their best finish of 8th. In the same tournament, we'd see North Macedonia feature for the first time ever. They hope to, for a 3rd straight time, screw with the Italians.
We like to troll. We like to go the night before one of their primaries.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
Malta is the only nation in this group to have never featured in the tournament, and in 13 Euro qualification campaigns, they've won just 4 times. So far, nothing too crazy has occurred in Group C. England won their first 2 qualifiers and sit at the top. Italy are just behind them after bouncing back against Malta, although one player many in the Italosphere have been hyping up is Mateo Retegri. In his first 2 caps, he scored twice. Retegri is originally from Argentina, however his maternal grandfather is Italian, thus the reason why he's able to play for Italy. The only other team to earn points in this window was North Macedonia, who defeated Malta 2-1. Group D gives us Croatia, Wales, Turkey, Armenia, and Latvia. Now, before I say anything more, are we trying to start a war here? Croatia has made the last 5 tournaments with their best finish coming in 2008 when they reached the quarterfinals. Wales didn't qualify for the Euros until 2016 where they shocked everyone finishing 3rd. They qualified again for 2020, but it will be interesting to see how this team fares now that Gareth Bale's retired. Turkey throughout the 2000s gave us some incredible dark horse performances, especially in 2008. In that tournament, they just barely missed out on the final after Philip Lahm called game right at the death. And since then, the dark horse title has been more of a Turkish ice cream trick for sports bettors than anything else. Armenia has never qualified for the Euros, but did come close to reaching 2012's edition. Latvia, though, have back in 2004. Despite them crashing out of the groups, their playoff spot to reach the tournament itself against Turkey is widely reminisced upon by many in the nation. Group D did not make us wait one bit for the geopolitical derby. Armenia took an early lead through an Ozan Kabak own goal. However, the Turks then made a comeback and acquired all 3 points. The other match that day was between Croatia and Wales. Aside from an early goal, Croatia dominated but were abysmal in their finishing, and it costed them, as right at the death, Wales snatched a point away with just their first shot on target. Both Croatia and Wales would go on to win their next matches and are now tied for first. Group B has Poland, the Czech Republic, Albania, Faroe Islands, and Moldova. Despite making it to multiple World Cups throughout the 70s and 80s, Poland didn't qualify for the Euros until 2008. In 2016, many saw them as a dark horse pick mainly because of Robert Lewandowski. Lewandowski only scored once throughout that entire tournament. But nonetheless, 2016 would be the Poles' best finish as they reached the quarterfinals. The Czechs have a pretty rich history when it comes to the Euros. As Czechoslovakia, they've won the whole thing in 1976. Then in their first tournament as the Czech Republic, they finished second just 20 years later. Albania's history, definitely not as much as the Czechs. Their only appearance was back in 2016 where they managed to be eliminated on a high note after beating Romania. Oh, by the way, speaking of Euro 2016, in that qualifying campaign, we witnessed UEFA trying to start another Balkan war. As for the Faroe Islands and Moldova, they both haven't even come close to ever qualifying. The Czechs currently hold onto first place in the group after an impressive victory against Poland followed by a draw with Moldova. For the Polish, losing to the Czechs was bad enough. But then you remember, recent corruption has led to their Eurovision entry being an aggressively mid-song instead of a guaranteed top 10. Well done, TVP. But don't lose all hope just yet, Poles, because Charlotte, North Carolina is here to heal you for the time being. Looking at the table again, while it may be just 2 games, Moldova are currently 3rd with 2 points. Group F has Belgium, Austria, Sweden, Azerbaijan, and Estonia. Despite everything we've heard about the golden generation of the 2010s, Belgium's best finish in the Euros goes all the way back to 1980 when they were runners-up. By the way, Belgium legacy of failures, coming soon. When? Soon. Austria has only qualified for 3 tournaments, with their best finish coming in 2020 when they reached the round of 16. However, we can never forget the wasted potential of 2016. Sweden's best finish comes in 1992 when they reached the semis of a tournament they hosted. Since then, they've looked quite shit. Azerbaijan and Estonia have both never qualified. However, Estonia came quite close back in 2012 when they reached the playoffs. Austria have started well and been rewarded with the #1 spot after 2 matches played. That being said, there was a scare against Estonia at home. Romelu Lukaku is either in qualification form or in a joker arc. In Belgium's first qualifier, he scored a hat-trick against Sweden, and as a result, they are now second with the game in hand. Sweden is the remaining nation to have scored points in this group after they bounced back and mauled Azerbaijan 5-0 at home. Group G, we have the Balkans, plus Lithuania. Hungary, as mentioned before on the channel, were a force to be reckoned with in the mid-1900s. Their best finish was 3rd place back in 1964. Nowadays, they're not as good as before, but are always a team to look out for, especially with how well they performed in Euro 2020's Group of Death and the most recent Nations League. As Yugoslavia, Serbia experienced 2 runners-up finishes in 1960 and 1968. However, as an independent nation, they have yet to qualify even once for the tournament. If you'd like to learn more about Serbia's awful records at tournaments, Just watch this video by Isaac. But with a talented core consisting of Mitrovic, Vlahovic, and Milinkovic-Savic, we might finally see them in the Euros, especially as they did win their Nations League group and have a guaranteed spot in the playoffs. Montenegro has never qualified, but did come very close in 2012, when an iconic last-minute goal from Andrea Della Basic against England would send the Montenegrins to the playoffs. The Euros have seen Bulgaria twice, and in both tournaments they were sent home in the groups. Since then, the national team has fallen off a cliff. And then there's Lithuania. They've never qualified ever. Currently, we have Serbia in first with 2 wins. Not far behind them is Hungary, who still have a game in hand. Keep an eye on Dominik Szoboszlai throughout the qualifiers, by the way. He's always been a menace for Hungary, but his recent performance against Bulgaria is signaling an awakening beyond comprehension. Montenegro has also started decently well. They're currently 3rd after also beating Bulgaria. Group H gives us Denmark, Finland, Slovenia, Kazakhstan, Northern Ireland, and San Marino. Denmark has one title dating back to 1992. After 80 years of anguish, the Finnish national team finally stopped being a factory of sadness and qualified for their first major tournament in 2020. Slovenia hasn't qualified for the Euros since 2000, surprisingly enough. However, with Benjamin Šeško and a couple other good players, we could see the country's return this year. Kazakhstan has never qualified for the Euros, but are on the up as of late. They won their Nations League group and promoted to League B, confirming at least playoffs. Take me back to the good old days when I had not a single care in the world and would sing Will Griggs on Fire. Northern Ireland's only appearance was back in 2016 when they reached the last 16. Finally, there's San Marino. In Euro qualifiers, they've won 0, drawn 1, and lost 75. That being said, watch out for them this year. There are noticeably small improvements happening. Back in August of last year, the under-19s actually defeated Gibraltar's U19s 4-0. The future is bright. Group H began with the match between Kazakhstan and Slovenia, and in just 23 minutes, the Kazakhs shocked everyone and took the lead. Unfortunately for the underdogs, they would not be able to hold on, and Slovenia scored 2 unanswered. Later that day, we had Denmark defeat Finland thanks to a Højlund hat-trick. And finally, Northern Ireland won 2-0 versus San Marino. Then came match day 2. Denmark scored 2 early goals against Kazakhstan. However, this time, it was the Hawks' turn to make a comeback. First was a penalty in the 73rd minute, then a belter from Askat Tajibergen in the 86th minute. Finally, 3 minutes later, Astana Arena exploded in exhilaration and disbelief as Kazakhstan completed the comeback and snatched away 3 points from the Danish. Denmark are currently ranked 18th in the world, mind you, and Kazakhstan 115th. 3 hours later, we'd witness Slovenia versus San Marino. And to everyone's surprise, the Minnows were putting up a great fight against Slovenia. They even held them to a goalless first half. Perhaps, just today, we might finally witness history in the making.
Beautifully moved, Zykes with the shot!
You gotta be fucking kidding me! As it stands, Slovenia are currently first in the group with 6 points. Then from 2nd to 5th, everyone has 3 points respectively, while San Marino are bottom because the football gods do not want to see this team ever be happy. Group I has Switzerland, Israel, Romania, Kosovo, Belarus, and Andorra. Switzerland finally broke the last 16 curse and reached the quarters of the European Championship in 2020. Israel has never played in the Euros, but their future is starting to look bright with their U19s reaching the final last year. It especially helps that they're guaranteed a playoff spot. Romania has qualified for 5 tournaments, with their latest being back in 2016. Their best finish, though, came in the 2000 edition when they reached the quarters. Kosovo, since becoming a member of UEFA, has impressed a lot. In their first qualification campaign, they just missed out after advancing to the playoffs, which really makes both Andorra and Belarus look awful considering how many more attempts they've both had to qualify. The Swiss are currently taking care of business in Group I, having won 2 of 2. But right behind them is Romania, who for once aren't bottling in qualification. They managed victories against both Andorra and Belarus to start their campaign. Meanwhile, everyone else has only managed draws at best. Finally, there is Group J, which has Portugal, Bosnia, Iceland, Luxembourg, Slovakia, and Liechtenstein. Portugal has been known to have very successful Euro campaigns. In their first 8 tournaments, they finished no lower than 7th. And then finally, after some shortcomings, they achieved the ultimate glory in 2016. Bosnia has never qualified for the Euros, and even more painfully, they've fallen short in the last 3 straight qualification playoffs. Speaking of playoffs, they are once again guaranteed a spot. I'm not really sure if that's a good thing or not at this point though. Iceland's first ever tournament was back in Euro 2016, where a formidable defense helped them reach the quarterfinals. Luxembourg may be small and haven't come even close to qualifying for the Euros, but in the last year or so, this young core has been packing the punches. Do not sleep on Luxembourg is all I'm going to say. Slovakia has featured in the last 2 European Championships, with one run reaching the round of 16 in 2016. And finally, there's Liechtenstein. don't have hope. Not even the might of Sisyphus can do anything here. Portugal are tearing it apart already in their qualification group. Meanwhile, it's already a pretty close battle for second that could get really interesting going into June. Slovakia hold the other qualification spot for now with 4 points. They drew with Luxembourg and then defeated Bosnia. Bosnia are just behind them after a comfortable victory against Iceland. Finally, Iceland themselves bounced back after doing a sub-zero head rip fatality on Liechtenstein. And so that is the roundup for the Euro qualifiers in March. It's pretty early to say, but I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Who do you think will be going through? Who might be upsetted in the next window? Let me know. And of course, a massive shout out to all our patrons, including Janos Balas, Chris Damasceno, Milio809, Weston Ware, Aldipu, Alex Rod, Ulta, Amin Suames, Aresan, Carlos Anaya, Daniel Ortiz, Francisco Hernandez, Guy, Miguel Munoz, Return Fire, Rory Burns, Saul, The Motor Drive, Tomicus, Trevor Batson, Vanilla Mexican 17, Victor, David Dunn, Dominic Griffin, Emmett Shea, Lewis, Joe Paricio, MX Weeb, Patrick Burley, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to join the Patreon, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my TikTok, trying to get to 20,000 there, and of course you can follow my semi-active Twitch. Now, I know I haven't streamed that much, that's only because I just got a PC and also a new router, so I gotta figure all that stuff out. But until then, I'll see you guys.